the boiler has decided to make a really loud sound in the background just as I decided to film this. So apologies if you can hear that in the background. Anyway, I used to post on this channel. I keep looking because I have the viewfinder here. I need to stop looking. I need to look here. I used to post on this channel probably about a couple of years ago, and I made like updates about my writing, my creative writing, and what I was doing. And I'm basically bringing this channel back from the grave and we're doing it again. This channel in general, like I'll maybe do more of a kind of get to know me or like things like that. But in general, this channel is gonna be a real kind of a big like digital garden for all of my interests. The main ones being books, reading, writing. I write both prose and poetry, and also other things like 9 to 5 content and just about things that I'm enjoying, so like physical media like photography and CDs and fun things like that. That's kind of off the point. This video is about me trying to get out of a rut with the poetry collection that I'm writing, and I decided to make a start on this project again after quite a gap of time. I had wanted to do a poetry collection for quite a while. For some reason, just like kept on putting it off. I think also as someone with a 9 to 5, it can be really difficult to make time for your own personal writing, especially when you get back from work and you're exhausted and you have a million chores to do. I kind of hopped onto the whole personal curriculum trend, and I've been trying to make more time for... Oh, I do not know what they're doing upstairs, but it's loud as... Anyway, I'm trying to make more time for working on this poetry collection, writing new poems, reworking old poems, and also just like not being too hard on myself about everything being perfect in the first draft. This is definitely a bit of a downfall for me. I have a habit of just expecting everything to be perfect on first draft and then getting annoyed when it's not. Basically, this is going to be kind of like a week-long vlog where I try and document little pockets of time that I have to work on this poetry collection that I want to write, because I'm going to be fitting this in alongside my 9 to 5 job, which is obviously quite a challenge. There might be some days where I hardly write anything or I don't feel like writing, and then there are other days where I might be really successful and have a really good update. I thought this would be quite fun to bring you along and try and motivate each other if you're also a writer trying to fit in writing with a 9 to 5 or a job or whatever you've got going on. So yeah, that's what this is going to be. The light is low-key dying already. It's like 3:52 on Sunday when I'm starting this. I made myself a coffee because I had a thumping headache that I could not get rid of, and I was like, there's no way I'm gonna write anything if I don't have a coffee. This is my poetry anthology project book. It's a very old notebook that I'm trying to use up. You can see I have a lot of notebooks. With this notebook, I'm basically trying to put any new poems that I write in here. As you can see, I've already kind of started writing. I don't know why I have stamps in there, just ignore that. Any prompts, any new ideas I have, I'm just putting in this notebook. I do also have a Google Doc that I am using, which has all the poems I've written so far that I'm like either completely happy with or semi-happy with. So I think I'm gonna try, and I have like a whole list of poetry prompts that I want to work through, so I'm gonna try and do one of them. But before I do that, I'm gonna do like a mind map and do like a bunch of like associated words that might form a poem. I remember where I got this idea from. I think it might have been the magazine that I read sometimes called Dyslexia, but I'll show you an example of what I mean. It's kind of like this. So it's kind of like a spider diagram. So you start with a word like travel, and then it links to another word like escapism, luggage, keys, and you just keep on doing that for the whole page until you have a bunch of words. And you try and write a poem based off some of those words. So it's just like a fun like prompt to get you started and get your brain whirring a little bit. It's still Sunday and I have written 2 poems. One of them I like quite a lot, which is more feministy. It was kind of from a poetry prompt. Poetry prompt was, when is a game not a game? And so that got me thinking about different types of games, like board games, sports games, and then I thought about like tag you're it. Kind of came from that, and it's kind of about how then as women we feel like we're kind of being watched on our every move. It does get a little bit deep, but yeah, it was fun to write. So I wrote that one. Can't think of a title for it though at the moment, which is kind of annoying, but I'm sure that will come with time. I think it probably still is going to need to be reworked, but actually for a first draft, it's not too bad. You can kind of see on here, I did a little bit of like planning first, and then yeah, I went into the poem here. Then I wrote another one on this page, and this one is more about the news and what's going on in Gaza, and this was quite complicated for me to write, and I think this is the one which I'm less sure on, that I think I'm gonna have to rework a little bit, because there are parts of it where I feel like my wording, I'm not saying exactly what I want to say in like an educated enough way. And I think also in general, when you're talking about things in poetry that are very like topical and can be very sensitive for a lot of people, I want to make sure that I do it right and I do it justice. I'm gonna look at this one a little bit more, but again, for a first draft, it's not too bad. One is it's about how I'm feeling about reading these stories in the news, about what's going on in Gaza, and also about my own heritage, because I actually have Jewish sort of like ancestry through my mum's side, and so it's kind of discussing like, despite being Jewish, how I disagree with certain things going on. That's where I'm up to it at the moment, and I'm going to try and type up some of the poems on my Google Doc. So yeah, that's where I'm at. That sound you can hear is our boiler, which is so loud. Every time you literally put the tap on, it goes yeah, like that. So you're probably going to hear that like 10 times within this update on Sunday. I wrote 2 poems. I have written them up onto my poetry anthology doc. Drafts are not bad. I'm thinking of trying to collate like more poetry prompts in my notebook just because I'm finding them really useful at the moment, because I do really struggle with like coming up with ideas on certain days, especially if it's like I'm tired and it's after work and I really don't feel like writing. They can be really helpful. This is the Google Doc which I'm kind of currently working off. Obviously I don't have a title at the moment for the anthology, so on the side at the moment I just have these subheadings: Faces in the Mirror, To Love, Genesis, Great Britain, Great Problems. These are kind of the themes that I'm working to, main themes or like sections of the anthology I'm working to at the moment. So the first one that I was talking about earlier that I wrote, which is very like female rage poem, I have provisionally called Countdown. Yeah, we're gonna hopefully see how the rest of the week goes. I think on the days where I am obviously working, it may be up and down. So my goal is to write one poem tomorrow. That's going to be my goal at the moment. I'm going to try and not push it too much. Tuesday I might try and look at more, like getting more prompts together, collection of prompts, and maybe doing a bit of research on that. I think pretty successful Sunday. It's currently 7:15. 7:15? Let me check the time. It's 7:18. And that's why I'm whispering. Because I don't want to wake up my boyfriend. I'm up earlier than usual. Because I have a work event I have to go to in London, like all day. I will update later in the day about my plans for working on poetry collection. I think it's going to be difficult to do anything on it during the day. I do have my Kindle with me, so I can read some stuff that I'm reading. I'm reading at the moment a short story collection called Your Friend Antenne by Maggie Shipstead. And in typical British style, it is apparently going to be raining for the entire day. Yeah, we love that. Night has not gone very to plan for me. I got back at a decent time actually from the work event I was at, and it went well. Yeah, it was good. It was fun. I was quite tired because I woke up really early this morning so that I could get in for this work event at 9:30. So I literally woke up at like 5:45. So when I got back, I was really tired. Currently 9:13. You can't really see. I am waiting for our Tesco delivery shop to come. As soon as I started filming the other video, the Tesco delivery driver came. And what was so funny was that he asked me for ID. And I was like, and I looked at him and I went, I'm 24. And I was like, I promise I'm 24, like please believe me. So that was funny. I don't know how many years I can hold on to that for until people start actually saying, oh no, we know you're that age. I didn't really vlog during the day. It was obviously a work event, and certain people might not want to be on camera and things like that, and I want to respect people's privacy who are like in like the company that I work for. Quite a lot of like things to do, like around the house, around the flat. Sorry. I also started having really bad flare-up of my pain, which was really fun. I still kind of am in a bit of pain. I have like chronic pelvic pain. I had like a keyhole surgery last year. I found that I had like pelvic congestion. A lot of people don't know a lot about pelvic congestion. It can have quite similar symptoms to conditions like endometriosis. So I'm trying to talk reasonably quiet because it's like later and I don't want people to be like, why is she yelling? I'm in a bit of pain, which is not really ideal because obviously I'm trying to do this a write poems every day thing. I'm thinking is, because I'm not feeling very well, I think what I'm gonna do is more of like a research evening. Instead of trying to force myself to write a specific number of poems, like a poem for the night, I've built up some poetry prompts on a page. I want to continue that, so I've got other ones I can look back at and come back to. I feel better tomorrow. I will actually do more of the like writing side, but sometimes you just have to be kind to yourself. So, as I showed yesterday, this is my main poetry anthology project notebook at the moment, and then this notebook, which is a really pretty notebook. I think my mum got it for me. I use this one more as like a commonplace writing advice notebook. I read this literary magazine called Miss Lexia, and sometimes I will cut bits out from the magazine that I like or books that I want to read, and I'll put them in here and I'll underline stuff, parts of articles that I like. Writing advice. Having like a sort of commonplace notebook for ideas and media you've consumed is like, it's just a really good idea. Sometimes I think when you write something down on your notes in your phone, or you just kind of read it on your phone, or you scroll past it, you forget that you've even looked at it. That you read that and thought, oh, that was interesting, or oh, maybe I'll look more into that topic, that artist or that photographer or that writer or that book or whatever. When you write something down on paper, or you cut it out and you put it in, you know, you stick it down with like Pritt stick or something, so it's physically in front of you, kind of can't forget about that as easily. I think that's one thing that digital can never replace. Digital has its place, but analog and paper and things like this also have their place. So, I don't know, that's my opinion, but just got a LinkedIn request. Someone, I'm so popular. Anyway, it is Thursday, 1:07. I'm currently having my lunch. I'm doing a work from home day. I don't usually do a work from home day on Thursday, but this is what I'm gonna get into. Basically halfway through filming this week, I just really started to not feel well at all in myself. Physically, I wasn't feeling very well. I think a lot of it was because I was feeling very overwhelmed and a bit stressed. A couple of days where I had a lot of things to organise and it got really on top of me. To the point that I was like, okay, I really don't feel that well. I think I need to have a day working from home. Also, I think I mentioned in like a clip from earlier in the week, but I not only do I have like a 9 to 5, but like most of the population, I also have chronic pelvic pain. That makes it really difficult sometimes to get things done, because some days I'll be like super productive, have loads of energy, like feel fine, and it can switch like halfway through the day and suddenly I'm in loads of pain and I can hardly move and I get really frustrated. And in general, when you have like, when you work full time, it is really hard to get things done. So I've not been super successful this week with doing more on my poetry collection. What I might do is kind of extend this vlog into the rest of the week and the weekend, so this might go out a little bit later. It's really important to show like a realistic kind of week in the life of someone who does work a normal job and doesn't have tons of time during the day to just write and write and write because I have to do my day job. At least for me, I don't see a lot of writers online always talking about these things. It's more like, well, here's like everything that I've written today and I've been super productive and I've done this, and you know, that obviously can be great. It can be very motivating and inspiring, but it can also sometimes make people feel like they're not doing enough if they don't have that free time, or they have kids, or they have a job, or whatever. I kind of want to show more of a realistic view of someone who likes to write, is wanting to write, writes quite regularly, but also has to factor in these other things. My plan today, because I'm feeling a bit better, is to possibly look again at the poetry prompts that I was kind of putting together a big bank of. I'm gonna say write one. It may possibly be more likely tomorrow. I don't really want to put that pressure on myself because, like for today, just as it's been a bit of a tough week already, I definitely want to write at least one tomorrow and another one over the weekend. Also, I don't think I showed you guys, I can overlay it here, but one thing that I did was really helpful on, I think it was Tuesday or possibly Monday. I did like a journal entry of what I thought was causing possibly some of my writing rut. Just like why I felt like I was having like writer's block a little bit. And from doing a bit of a journal entry, I kind of got to the bottom of it, which was that I know the topics that I want to write about in my poems. I don't always know how to say them in the way that I want to. It's definitely something I'm going to try and work on and look and kind of experiment with different ways of, I guess, saying the same message. So for example, I made a whole list of like topics that I kind of want to talk about within the poetry collection. Things like family dynamics, female rage, state of Britain, a lot of different ideas. It's just how to put them into practice. And one of the things that I want to do is test out a lot of different poetic forms as well, because I think sometimes for me having structure to a poem can actually be quite helpful, but it stops me getting too overwhelmed because it's like I have to do it in a certain way, like I have that kind of brain. I think probably I'll get a bit more done from Friday onto the weekend. As a person addicted to coffee, I am trying to get into decaf. So I've only had one coffee today. This one is a decaf. It tastes basically the same to me, so that's a good thing. I do be getting the jitters, I'm not gonna lie. So. It is 9:48 on Sunday. The last time I checked in was Friday. I did make some progress, actually quite a lot of progress, with researching into different poetic forms. And he's kind of not familiar with what I'm talking about when I'm talking about that. In poetry, there are loads of different ways to basically write poems. There are more sort of traditional formats that you can write in, and then there are sort of more modern formats which you've probably seen more of, because unless you've gone and studied something like English or maybe like history or something like that, or you're really into old poetry, probably most of the poetry you've come into contact with is more like modern poetry. One of the things that's really helpful about different, or like experimenting with different forms of poetry, is that they can kind of test your creativity in a lot of different ways. Like you look for new ways of saying the same thing. At uni, studied creative writing and English lit, so I do have a decent knowledge of different poetic forms, because I did a lot of analysing and a lot of annotating and writing and things like that. But even with all that knowledge, I've forgotten some of it. So I made a lot of notes. I will link a page where I got a lot of this information down below, because it wasn't from a book, it was just from the Poetry Foundation. Poetry Foundation has loads of really great resources on their website. They also publish poetry quite often. But I basically went on there, on the page that they have about poetic forms. Just made tons and tons of notes. Made notes about sonnets, I've made notes about the sestina, which is a French verse form. I also included a lot of examples in my notes of some of these poems that are a little bit more complex to get your head around, especially if they've got like different sort of like rhyme schemes that can get quite complicated. For my notes about the sestina, like literally wrote out a whole poem like that someone has written, just so I could like go around and like almost explain to myself how the form worked. I find that if you don't do things like this, you just never come back to it. About the, I'm probably not pronouncing this right, but it's the Haibun poem, a poetic form which is Japanese, and I'll put the name here of who kind of invented this form because I cannot remember. Japanese poet. I wrote notes about the golden shovel, which is a poetic form that allows poets to pay tribute to existing work, so whether that's another poem or even like a song. Maybe it's just my brain. When you've got a bit of structure to work with, I think it can sometimes alleviate sort of overwhelming thoughts of like, well, what should I write? Because you've already got these kind of rules in your head of like, okay, well, this line has to rhyme with this line and it has to have this many syllables. And for my brain personally, having a little bit of that structure before you start writing can be quite helpful. But poetry is so broad, you can literally write about anything and everything, and sometimes it is quite overwhelming to try and narrow that down. So I've been finding that quite helpful. Yesterday, so Saturday night, wrote 2 poems. One of them was kind of in the golden shovel style, so that is where you take tribute from someone else's work. So I took part of the beginning of Singing in the Rain, in the musical Singing in the Rain, and I did it to a poem which is kind of for my mum, and it's exploring, that's one of her favourite musicals ever, and it's kind of exploring, try and understand who your parent was before you. I had a lot of fun with that, yeah, so you can kind of see some of it here. I think it is done by any means. There's a lot in it that I actually do like. I then also tried to write a high bun. I still don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's a Japanese poetic form where first part of it is sort of prose poem style, and then the final bit of it is a haiku. Haiku has like 3 lines. The first line is 5 syllables, second line is 7 syllables, and the final line, third line, is 5 syllables again. And the idea of the Haibun is to have the prose part of the poem. The Haibun prose part often takes the form of an essay, diary, or travelogue, and the haiku part is placed after prose and serves as a reflection, a distillation, or an emotional climax in the preceding text. I had a little experiment with this, and this is so random. I wrote about like that I always see these squirrels on my way to work when I'm like walking in, and I'm convinced that I have seen the same squirrel like multiple times, and that this squirrel just comes out like right at the same time when I'm always there, which is a really random thing to write about. The first part of it is kind of about that, and me being like, why is the squirrel always just running away from me? Like what is wrong with me? Final bit is a haiku that actually talks more about a friend of yours and what it's like when they put distance between you and them. So you can kind of see in that way how I've taken something that's quite light and almost a little bit funny and humorous, and then I've twisted it and I've kind of discussed something actually a bit more serious and a little bit more emotional and painful. And what I can see from my research, the Haibun poetic form is really good for that. I've had a lot of like experimentation with different forms kind of within the week. So I've had some days where it's gone better than others. I've just got to keep it up. But I'll definitely do another sort of like check-in video. I think I'm gonna try and make this like a regular series. I think if anyone is watching this who is also working on a poetry collection, my personal main piece of advice would be, don't just do everything on your laptop. I know it is really easy to do this because then everything is in one place and it feels very like organised and you can kind of go on it whenever you want. You can always put whatever is written down onto a computer. You can write things up, but when you're doing like a first draft of something, or you're trying to brainstorm, or you're trying to journal, or you're just trying to almost do that creative process, I just don't think anything is better than just having a notebook. And it feels so much less threatening. It feels so much less serious because you're kind of just like, it's your space. I don't know if that's just my personal preference, but I found it really helpful, and I think this is kind of my like little poetry bible at the moment. In terms of like my goals for like the remainder of the year with this poetry collection, I would say I would like to be in a good place with the drafting process by Christmas. And also there's one poem in particular that I really want to go back and rework. The recreation of a poem by Allen Ginsberg, his most famous poem, How. When I was in uni, wrote like a kind of recreation of this about sort of like the state of Britain. I really want to rework that because I think it's a really interesting idea and I've got a lot of thoughts for it. So yeah, but I've done a lot of talking, so I'm gonna shut up now. But yeah, thank you for watching my drafting diary, and I'll definitely be updating more on here with this project. I'm interested to know if anyone is watching, if you're working on your own writing project, whether it's poetry, novel, etc. So yeah, please tell me down below. That's pretty much all from me, so bye.